Okay, so thank you for taking time to join us today for this session entitled Key Tech Learnings from 5 Years of Apex Legends, How to Run Your Live Service Game. And I'm delighted to welcome our speaker. And, I've heard you called a legend. I've heard you called a titan, Fred. I don't know what you would like to be called, but how about we go with Fred Gill? How are you doing?
Fred's fine, thank you. Thank you for that, Sam. I'm just going to start sharing my screen, if that's okay.
Yeah, I'm just going to do a little preamble so
Okay.
people know who you are, Fred. I know you're going to cover that early on, but just for our audience and a little bit of housekeeping. Um, So Fred's experience in the world of live games really is genuinely second to none. His CV includes time spent at luminaries such as EA, Swordfish, Respawn Entertainment, with classic titles launched: Battlefield, Modern Combat, Crisis, Syndicate, A Way Out, Titanfall, Jedi Fallen Order, before becoming the technical director at Apex Legend. And it says here you semi-retired in 2023. I might ask you about whether you genuinely have semi-retired or not. But today, Fred's going to share some of his learnings from that last role, a 5-year stint at working on Apex Legends. Um, this is being recorded and it will be available afterwards. And it's meant to be an interactive session as much as possible, even though it's a webinar. So we've got a Q&A button at the bottom. So please feel free to type in any questions that you would like me to ask for Fred, and we'll go through those at the end once Fred has done his talk today. Yeah, try and put them in the Q&A. Feel free to have a chat with each other in the chat as you go, and welcome everyone. It's meant to be as interactive as possible, so we'll aim to do that. But Fred, I'm going to hand over to you then, and if you can get your slides up, we'll start there. But do you want to have you actually retired while you're loading your screen? Is this a have you come out of retirement just for this? What's going on?
No, I have. I couldn't go from 100 miles an hour to nothing, so I've semi-retired to make games for myself. But as
Right.
you'll see later, there's a few things I'm involved with. I don't think I could ever leave the games industry. It was my life for 40 plus years.
Yeah.
I've got a lot of friends in there, and I'm still very passionate about playing and making video games.
Well, let me ask you at the end then about some of the projects that you're working on. Let's hear about what you're doing next. But for now, I'll disappear off camera and leave you to take it away. Thank you.
Thanks everybody for joining today. Couple of notes. This is 4-ish hours compressed into one, so there's bits missing. I am more than happy to follow up afterwards with individuals in email. My email addresses will be shared after this talk. The kind of main purpose for doing this is the team that shipped Apex Legends came from shipping box product. They shipped Titanfall 1 and Titanfall 2. And so whilst as a development team, we got an awful lot right in Apex Legends, there were mistakes along the way and learnings along the way. My goal in sharing this with everybody here is that you go and make different mistakes to what we made on Apex Legends to make your games great. I've been in the video games industry 40 years. I will run through my history very quickly because that's not the purpose. When I semi-retired from Respawn, it was as VP and head of tech for Respawn Entertainment, and I was also franchise TD for Apex Legends. So with that in mind, I need to click there. Some of the titles, these were shipped university and a company I founded with 4 fellow Birmingham University graduates called Attention to Detail. Then I joined the EA Northwest studio in 2004 and helped ship Battlefield Modern Combat with DICE. And then I went for a period of time to Swordfish, shipped 50 Cent Blood on the Sand. And then in 2008, I joined EA Partners, was asked to come back to EA by the people I'd worked with before. And EA Partners is a small division in EA that helps independent game developers ship their titles with EA as a publisher. So Crisis, Crisis 2, Crisis 3, Syndicate, Unravel, etc. One of those partners was Respawn Entertainment, and I helped them ship Titanfall 1 and Titanfall 2. And then finally, I joined Respawn as their studio TD and then became the VP and head of tech and helped them ship Fallen Order, Jedi Survivor, and Apex Legends. And I started on Apex Legends 9 months before it was still forming as a game. You know, when I played it a couple of months earlier, there were Titans in there, etc. But joined 9 months before we shipped, and then went through to season 18 of Apex Legends, which was around August 2023. What am I doing now? As Sam said, I'm semi-retired. I'm a board advisor to Code Wizards. I met the founder of Code Wizards while we were shipping Titanfall 2, loved their technical prowess, became friends through shipping Titanfall 2, and then joined them last year as a board advisor. Helped create something called iBake2, which is a free utility for developers, solving a problem that I saw on Apex and we'll come to later. But it's iBake2, it's a differ. It differentially compresses data so you can distribute builds very, very quickly. I'm a board advisor to a company called Minimising, who are in the generative AI, LLM, SLM space. They not something I took lightly. The guys that run it, Tom and Ben, are very smart, got a lot of experience in that space, and created some unique tech that allows character customizations and quests in games where we have, it kind of manages that juxtaposition between, we have a shared experience that we can talk about and have water cooler moments, but we're experiencing something slightly different, so it feels personal, which is tricky to do. Got a lot of respect for those guys. And then I'm vice president of the Special Effect Golf Society, which is formed of games industry people that are trying to give back to Special Effect, a wonderful charity that helps individuals that are severely disabled or sometimes sadly end of life to be able to carry on playing games. And they do it one person at a time, and they're absolutely brilliant. We've managed to generate and channel funds in to help Special Effect. And then I'm also a founder of Antidote Gamers, which is a charity registered in the UK. Founded that with Kevin Strange, who is from AMD. Some of you may know him. We teach kids, again, this was something I saw in Apex. We're teaching kids in real life after school clubs how to recognize and deal with toxic behavior when they're playing video games online. So that's something else that's close to my heart. And then I'm also, actually, before I move on, I'm also mentoring everything from individuals that are making games through to a husband and wife team in Spain, through to a couple of major developers that will be shipping titles in the next couple of years. So not really managed that retirement very well. Before we start, I'll give you some background to Apex Legends. So the founders of Respawn Entertainment came from Call of Duty. They created the Call of Duty franchise, and at the time they left and formed Respawn Entertainment, Call of Duty was using listening servers. That's where one of the consoles or the PCs is acting as a server as well as a client. It has variable quality controllability, and it's very easy to suffer from a lot of cheating. So the founders wanted to move away from that. But at the time, there weren't really any solutions for scaling cloud dynamically. The way that it used to work was you rent servers in advance based on forecasts, and you'd hope you got your numbers right. If you didn't have enough servers, which happened a couple of times at EA, people weren't able to get into the games, and by the time you managed to order the servers, sometimes the players had left and gone on to other titles. And if you ordered too many servers, was a massive financial outlay. Having said that, it was always better to over-order than under-order. It's just how good your forecasts are. And in one thing I've learned in 40 years of the video games industry is every single forecast I've ever seen is always wrong, including mine. Doesn't mean you shouldn't do them. Respawn also were very much into making games. They make tech as a side effect of needing to make it to make the game work and function. When Respawn founded, they licensed the source engine from Valve, and that was heavily modified for Titanfall 1 and then Titanfall 2 and then Apex, and is now internally dubbed the Resource Engine, the Respawn source engine. One of the key things around Apex's launch, Drew McCoy, who was the executive producer, and the marketing guys at Respawn, rightly said that the only way they could ever start talking about Apex as a title was if the players had it in their hands. If we started doing a traditional marketing campaign 6 to 9 months before shipping it, all the public and the players would focus on is why are they not talking about Titanfall 3? They shouldn't be making this stupid thing. They should be making Titanfall 3. And so the decision was made to do the mic drop moment. The players would be able to play the game the day we announced the game, which was ultimately the 4th of February 2019. Originally, the game was set to launch earlier, but we had a lot of influencers playing the game, giving valuable feedback. And while they loved the game, they all came back with consistent feedback that there wasn't enough content to keep them hanging around. And so we could have launched in 2018, but they would have all been there for a couple of weeks and then moved on to other titles. So we had 5 Legends in 2018, but we're making another 3. And they said the minimum we needed to ship was 8, and that would give the combinatorial ability for much more longer tail on the stream for the streamers and the influencers. So we took the decision to delay the launch because the game was going to be shadow drop, mic drop. Nobody in EA, or only a handful of people in EA, knew about the title. And it also meant we couldn't do a beta, we couldn't do a tech test. We had to essentially launch blind. Now, it was an evolution of Titanfall 1 and Titanfall 2 tech, so some risk had been mitigated, but definitely not all risk. And there were hard decisions about what to ship with and what to delay. Interestingly, about 3 months before we shipped, 2 to 3 months before we shipped, some of the VPs in EA had played the game, and they looked at our forecasts, and our forecasts went up by over 10 times because they're like, this is good, it's free to play. Fortnite, I think, had just hit around 8 million concurrent players, including mobile. And forecasting, the previous forecasts were more based on Titanfall 1 and Titanfall 2, because nobody really knew in EA how to forecast for a AAA free-to-play game. So that increase of over 10 times in terms of PSU really changed the way we as a team thought about how do we need to test this game so that we can ship it and have some confidence that what we're shipping is going to be solid without doing a tech test or a closed or an open beta because of that shadow drop, mic drop moment. So here are some of the stats from Apex. We launched on a Monday, which was a great day to launch because it gave us a nice steady build up for the week. We had 2.5 million players in 24 hours and ultimately over 100 million players in 2 years. When we shipped, about 110 people worked on the game, excluding external contractors and content providers. We did outsource our assets, etc. When I left in August 2023, there were about 350 people on the team, excluding QA. That first weekend, we hit over 2.2 million concurrent players, and that was far in excess of our original forecast. And it was bumpy getting to 2.2 million, but I'm so glad we had been aiming for significantly higher than that because we'd actually spent the 3 months before ship with that PCU or with that forecast in there, really testing out some of the core back-end systems to make sure we had some confidence in that we would be able to hit high numbers. Again, internet statistics, as of March 2023, over $3 billion from Apex. Last year, there was $5 million in prize money for Apex Legends Global Series. And then every single day on Apex, there are billions and billions and billions of telemetry data points coming in to the game. This is a rough architecture diagram for Apex back in 2023 that I can remember. So the green section in the middle is the back-end Strider, which came through Titanfall. Strider is one of the Titan classes. It's lightweight, very fast. That was the goal. That's why it was named that way. It handled some of the core services. They were evolutions of Titanfall 1 and Titanfall 2. And then we launched on Multiplay, which was a hybrid streaming system, hybrid scaling system. So it started in bare metal, which kept the cost low, and scaled into cloud. Recently, Apex switched to Amazon Game Lift for similar reasons to why Titanfall 2 didn't ship on Thunderhead when it shipped with Microsoft Thunderhead on Titanfall 1. That might come up as a question later. The other interesting thing is there were several of these, I've got asterisks in, we didn't ship with those. So we didn't ship with EA Groups, we didn't ship with Friends, we didn't ship on Switch, we didn't ship on Steam, we didn't ship on PlayStation 5 or Xbox Series S or X. Those are all added in the live service with various degrees of pain. And more importantly, when we launched, Sony and Microsoft were not even entertaining cross progression or cross play. So you couldn't actually play each other on different platforms. And we had, so if you look at this architecture diagram, when we launched in 2019, there were 3 separate Striders, one for PlayStation, one for Xbox, one for PC. And so there's a massive engineering effort to bring all that together for cross play and then ultimately to allow cross progression. One more important point on this is that Apex, when I left, didn't have a CDN. All of the client updates and content are delivered through client patches, which means you've got to go through a certification process with Sony, Microsoft, Nintendo, synchronize all of those so you can ship everything rather than being able to download stuff dynamically. Again, that came from us being box product developers used to shipping box products. Ultimately, it means the platform holders are paying the costs for the CDN as part of their licensing fees, but it does mean can be a delay depending on what content you're trying to change in getting that to the players from the dev team. We're not going to talk about mobile, and the reason for that is that, well, I'll talk about it now, but very briefly, there was a decision made that the console and mobile markets are different for a game like Apex, which is quite sweaty and hardcore, or was when it launched, and that doesn't necessarily apply to mobiles, and the engine wasn't geared up for mobile thermal capabilities, etc. It would have been an awful lot of engineering effort. So Respawn partnered up with Tencent to make a mobile version, which ultimately didn't do brilliant numbers, and so sadly was shut down after it won Game of the Year with Google and with Apple. What's a typical year in Apex? This was around 2023. There's a lot of content. The main thing here is that players like, as fast as a game team, a dev team can run in a live service, the players want more. So it doesn't matter how much content you produce and publish, the players are always asking for more and more and more. And what they're also asking for is content to never be turned off, so nothing removed. So they just keep wanting more and more things added, and they don't like limited time content either. And from a development perspective, it's also, if you have content that's removed or content that is turned off, that creates a real market for selling or stealing accounts that have managed to get those pieces of content. I think Apex more recently is down to 3 or 2 legends every year. And the last thing, playlists, they are the mechanism by which Respawn controlled what was enabled and disabled in the game to change the timings on the ring, could nerf weapons, could remove characters, etc. It was a really powerful way of controlling in real time what players could and couldn't do in the game. So that kind of counted a little bit for the fact that content was delivered through these client patches that had to go through the first parties. Let's pause here. Live service is incredibly hard. Anybody that works in a live service delivering content regularly, I take my hat off to, having done it for 4.5 years. The first 9 months, it was box product. Players, as I've said, have insatiable appetite. It is like shipping a box product every X number of weeks. In Apex's case, it's 12, 13 weeks, except that it isn't. When you're shipping a box product, there are shortcuts you will take, there are bug fixes you will do that won't come back and bite you. If you do dirty hacks to ship something for a live service, those will come back and bite you in a later season. And so there's a real balancing act around getting people to have the mindset that they need to finish something to a high quality with this clock ticking all the time. And that's really hard in a team because there's, I can fix it the next season. Yeah, if you were trying to ship something else the next season, etc. So kind of getting that balance right is really, really hard to do. And I would say it's 2 to 10 times easier to add something before ship than it is after ship. Because once you've shipped the game, you're trying to make sure that live service is running smoothly because that's generating revenue. And so nothing breaks whilst also adding all of this new content and new code. And it's extremely hard to do. And then the trustworthiness piece is, in a live service, you have to build a reputation for, you can't just talk about what you're going to ship. You have to repeatedly show that what you are talking about shipping, you do ship, and you ship when you say you're going to ship it, and it's good quality. And it's very easy to lose that trust that you've built up with the players. And you've also, there's a counter to this, you've got to be very careful about what you talk about because there are accounting and revenue recognition policies around that. So it sometimes can be very tricky to talk to the players about what you're going to ship when, because that can affect your accounting for the game. The other thing is that standing still, so doing nothing in a live service, if you didn't ship any more content in a live service, there are still things you have to do because you've got that service running around security. Security is changing all the time. PHP libraries or vulnerabilities are found in lots of different packages. You might have to update those. They might have dependency chain problems where you have to update an SDK with one of the platform holders. That might mean you actually need a new version of Visual Studio. Those things you've really got to think about. And then regulations worldwide are changing. So around the time we launched Apex Legends, CBAA came in North America, which is an act which means that disabled people can't be disadvantaged in a social environment. So that affects voice over IP or text chat. And that they previously delayed it, but the lawyers at EA rightly said that they thought it was really going to come in the February just before, or the January just before we shipped. It did. So we had to do scrambling around making sure that we were compliant with that. Nowadays, you've got the OSA and the DSA from the UK and Europe that affect how you're looking after your community, and also starting to affect how you can monetize. Apex uses loot boxes. Personally, not a fan of loot boxes. I think you should be paying for what you're buying. I don't like that. It feels to me like a dopamine hit and bordering on gambling. They're starting to control how you do pricing in games and things like that. And ultimately, those potentially are very good for the players. It's also incredibly rewarding. You're shipping something to players every 12, 13 weeks. If it's not quite right, you get to tweak it and improve it for the players. If it's completely wrong, you can discard it and change it next time around. And I know plenty of people at EA that joined the Apex team that had been part of teams where they'd had several titles not ship, they were shut down, that came onto the team and absolutely loved shipping something to players every 12, 13 weeks and getting that feedback. It's absolutely brilliant for them. Stability and resilient. Oops. Right, so here's some of the pain points we had on Apex. Once we'd shipped, in order to kind of make sure the game was stable, the number of builds we were building daily went up 5 times. It wasn't immediate, but it was over a period of months. We found more builds we had. So your CI/CD pipeline, branching structure, Apex had a dead end branch for every season that we shipped. So we push everything into the branch and manage all that. And as soon as that shipped, it was archived off and the main line. So it's pushed from the main line to the branch, and then the main line carried on. That included doing experimentation a couple of weeks out. We didn't actually launch with streams. That was an ongoing effort in Perforce to put streams into Apex Legends to improve the work-life balance of the team. And get as much automated testing as you can. We'll touch on that later. Client config files. So the source engine had lots of client configs. They become a security nightmare. Players were able to use those for cheating. So having allow lists rather than block lists for those, because there were several thousand and the developers have put into the game to be able to allow them to control and tweak things. Ultimately, we had to put those in an allow list, and every single time you're shipping an update, you need to check those just to make sure you haven't created another attack vector. The scripting language in Apex, Squirrel script, was shipped as as text files in all the builds, and so data miners were able to go in and look for what was coming next, or look for potential exploits in the code. Again, there was ongoing efforts to turn that into bytecode and potentially nativize that. Player definition files, which was a persistence file which allowed the designers to iterate really, really quickly in Apex, were a nightmare because of the branching and the way people just experimented. Creating one of those that matched what we needed to ship was very fraught. Only a handful of people in the studio knew how to merge those because it wasn't very obvious. And we did break the game a couple of times by shipping the wrong thing. And then making sure you've got a single source of truth. The server command lines and the playlists. Again, people created lots of server command lines so they could test things out. Those command lines could get very long. Knowing what needed to be turned on to ship a server for retail became a science. And our playlists in dev were 3,000 lines because we controlled everything, and there were only 700 in retail. And again, matching one to the other was a real pain point. Knowing whether you disabled something you shouldn't have done, etc. They were quite quick to iterate on if you'd made a mistake, but we did break the game a couple of times. There's lots of tooling going on to try and improve that process so that it was more scientific and less prone to breaking. And then the other thing that hurt was COVID. Respawn, like everybody else in 2020, had to decamp from offices. We'd been playing builds every single day, pulled down from the network, and suddenly people were working from home and couldn't necessarily download a build in 24 hours. Well, juggling that with connecting via VPNs to the office and pulling all the data down from Perforce. And so the number of play tests we were able to play really suffered. And lots of work had to go into improving the cadence of those and getting people back. Ultimately, Respawn started using Steam as a distribution platform, which was great for PC, but it didn't help the consoles. And so what happened is we put more focus onto PC, and again broke some of the console releases. We weren't looking at the performance as much as we should have been doing, and so there were a couple of times you'll have noticed in the live service that the console versions suffered on performance, and we had to scramble quickly to recover the situation. And that's where iBeg 2 came from. Stability. These are all important. I'm not going to go through these. These are all topics in their own right. Could spend hours on these, but essentially, test your backend, test the client, build tools, thin clients that emulate or like the players, so the same retry timings and everything else. Yes, you can simulate that with scripts, but keeping the two in sync is hard. Keeping a thin client up to date is hard as well. We built bots to test out gameplay and to simulate the number of players in the game so that we didn't need 60 testers in every play test. Get ways of scaling and doing and automating as much as possible. Inject latency and errors where you can. Collect and analyze your data. But most importantly, map that back to what's the player experience whilst you're doing all of this, whilst the back end is stressed. Does games still feel good? Or is it starting to feel like a wading through treacle? So collecting and analyzing the data is good, but actually ultimately what you really care about is what does this feel like for the player. With resilience, you're trying to buy yourself as much time as you can for root cause analysis and doing the proper fix. And that's why the kind of boring stuff matters of build system and branching structures and everything else. Launching on a Monday was brilliant for Apex because it gave us a week of, we had minor outages as we scaled up, minor fixes that we had to put in place. But rather than it being everybody piling in at the weekend and hitting very large numbers where we had no ability to see how the service was behaving and figure out where we were comfortable and where we were uncomfortable. Minimize dependencies between systems. A great example of this was when Apex launched, the store was decoupled from the game. So if EA Marketplace, which was effectively the bank, it said what people owned from cosmetics perspective, if that wasn't working, what we did was we gave everybody access to all of the legends and all of the content. But we wouldn't let them save the loadouts. So if the EA Marketplace was down, they could play with everything, but they couldn't re-equip when they came back in when the store was working. And that meant that if Marketplace had been a problem, the game carried on. Players would have been happy. They'd have been very happy they got access to all of the legends. Unfortunately, by season 16, that rotted. And so we had a scaling problem with Marketplace in season 16, and the game wouldn't run properly because a hard dependency had been created between the game and the shop Marketplace at that time. And that took away our ability to find the root cause and do a proper fix. We had to scramble, and it just creates that extra pressure when it's when you've got people wanting to get into the game and they can't get into the game at all. So if you can minimize dependencies, loose coupling wherever possible, give players more than they expect, they'll be very happy. Another thing that Apex does is recycle servers. So every server is restarted in the background at different cadences, but around 4 hours. And what that means is if you've got a slow resource leak or a memory leak, it gives you time to go and find it properly and fix it properly, rather than you have to scramble around and do sticky plasters, band-aids everywhere. Again, boring stuff, build pipeline, testing critical, and automate as much as you possibly can. Games are so damn big nowadays that testing absolutely every combination of everything is almost impossible. And so as much as you can automate so that the QA team can focus on quality, the better place you'll be. And then collect telemetry. It's your friend. When we launched Apex Legends, it was really good at calming down some of the execs in Respawn and EA, because we'd never launched live service or hadn't launched a free-to-play live service game from EA for a number of years. And so having the data to just inform people about what players were doing in the game, how they were spending their time, how they were spending money, etc. Data can be your friend. And then remember to play the game as your player does. Really important that you keep playing the game and you experience what they're experiencing. And then kind of summary of this is when Apex launched, when Titanfall launched, and remember these were evolutions of Titanfall tech, a lot of the middleware didn't exist. And so Respawn created the tech because there weren't providers out there. They used Thunderhead because that exists from Microsoft. But nowadays you've got people like Pragma, Heroic Labs, GGWP, VivVox, etc. That the services now exist. They're road tested. They're road tested to scale. They're scale tested. There are very good solutions out there. They've been commoditized in a lot of areas. Instead of creating basic services that most live services need now, figure out where your innovation is going to be, what the gaps are, and make a difference there. Don't focus on the bread and butter stuff. That's been solved now. It's commoditized. You can license it. There are very good providers out there. There are very good companies that can help you integrate that stuff as well. As I've said a number of times, forecasts are always wrong. A lot of what we did between finding out our peak concurrent user or forecasts were gone up by over 10 times was simulation, stressing different parts of the back end system. And we also did a lot of internal testing. Those are always just approximations. Even if you come up with a load testing plan, and we had this a couple of times on Apex where we'd load tested various systems like Marketplace around season 16. Players spent time in Marketplace differently to the way we'd been thinking they would do. Players don't play the game the way that devs or QA play the game, and players don't spend money the way that devs or QA spend money. If you're giving your developers or your QA free in-game currency, that they just don't spend that the same way that somebody who's earned that money the hard way through work spends it, because it has a different meaning to them. So there are limitations around these. But you need to do all three of these. You need to simulate, you need to do your forecasts, you need to do the testing. Just recognize they have limitations, but do them all. Team health and longevity. Again, the boring stuff matters. Try and make sure you've got as many server-side levers as possible, kill switches, changing timings on things, how often APIs are called, etc. Again, the playlists in Apex Legends were a great way of us being able to configure the back end and make changes on the fly to keep the service running, to take new content that we just introduced. If it had a bug, take it out of rotation, give us time to do the fix the right way. Again, that data, telemetry is your friend. Some telemetry you need immediately, dashboards for the service, work out where your important signals are, what's important to the service running, what are the things that give you the most advanced warning of something about to go wrong, and watch those or have triggers set on them so they're telling you. And then that data can be invaluable for understanding, again, with the community, there can be a lot of noise on in Discord and in Reddit and all of those channels. We did a lot of correlating that back to the data we were seeing to go, oh yeah, that really is a problem. Players are struggling with this. So it allows you to get the signal from the noise, which can be very important. And then UI and UX are extremely critical and undervalued. On Apex Legends, there is an element with a live service like Apex Legend, and this isn't the case for Apex Legends. Respawn always set out to make a great game, and they had microtransactions to go along with it. But some of the other titles out there are more a shop front with something entertaining to do underneath or might be social, etc. I'm not saying that's a bad thing, but when you're selling potentially thousands of items, tens of thousands of items, and you've got different game modes, etc., you've got different assets, the UI and UX is extremely critical, and the way it hooks into the back end is also really important. Don't have 5 or 6 different ways of buying and purchasing something in your core systems. Apex did, and that meant it was extremely fragile. If your PlayStation Plus award came through a different system to buying it through to a different award, it just created lots of problems and noise for the team. Debt. This is a recent post from Helldivers. Again, tremendous amount of respect for what those guys do. Whenever you make a change in your code or to your assets, there is a chance of you building up a technical debt or a debt. We moved away from talking about it being technical because the content creators were equally capable of creating debt as the engineers or the scripters. And it tends to come when people are rushing to finish something and doing those quick hacks just to get it out. And you've got this real fight to make sure that people have got the right amount of time to build something solid that they don't think will incur much technical debt. Again, as you keep expanding code base or the number of assets, the combinations of everything together means you will undoubtedly be incurring some debt you could never imagine or you couldn't account for when you actually created it. And you've got to build in time in the schedules to go back and service some of that debt, because eventually it becomes impossible to service and you end up apologizing to the players. As I said earlier, I've changed the number here. Major tech changes can take 3 to 10 times longer to get in because you're trying not to break the existing game. An example here is Epic bought Easy Anti-Cheat. We shipped on the original Easy Anti-Cheat APIs, and then they became Epic's open source APIs. That took over 6 months to move from one set of APIs to from the EAC APIs to the EOS EAC APIs, because we couldn't break the live game. We had to make sure both worked in parallel, because a hard switchover would have been very hard on an anti-cheat solution. the other thing is you are under constant attack in a live service. We'll go through that in a minute. But your players, bad actors generally, anybody that thinks they can get a news headline from it, just continually attacking you, trying to figure out ways to break your game or break your economy. Just continuous attack. So it's something you've just got to remind the team, not to let standards slide on secure coding, implementing things securely. Just got to watch it continually. Innovating is extremely hard whilst you're delivering a live service because, as per before, players always want more. You've got to get that balance between what can generate revenue in a free-to-play game versus, are you giving the players enough so they hang around, versus you need to be looking at how can you innovate and bring them something new so that they stay around in a year or 2 years' time. And Respawn tried teams that leapfrogged each other and then feature pods that worked on things together with varying degrees of success. Some of this comes around just the way that the pipelines and people are used to working with each other. But it's a real struggle to get that short term. You want people in there, so you're generating revenue, versus long term, how do you make sure there's something exciting for people in 18 months, 2 years' time? And then one of the other things to try and make sure you do, grow your team very slowly. There is that constant pressure to add more content and feed the players. Just do it in a sustainable way, bringing new people onto a team, make sure they're embedded properly, they understand the ethos, the goals of the product, etc. Growing it, if you grow a team too quickly, it can really have a kind of impact on your ability to deliver. Now let's go through some of the attacks. We're in the last kind of 5 minutes, which will give us hopefully 10 minutes for Q&A. So you've got different types. Cheaters, they'll try denial of service attacks. That's a low volume. Can they cause the server to slow down? Can they kick other players through to DDoS? High volume. Can they take a server down? Can they have similar effects? Can they affect the latency so that they can sneak some extra content? Can they win content? Can they affect the API calls so that they can get things for free, etc.? You've got cheat engines. After Apex launched, there were 400 cheat engines in China, all dedicated to Apex Legends. You end up with competitive teams collaborating, low population servers like Asia Pacific, Australia, New Zealand at night. What we found was teams were kind of meeting up regularly. One team was hammering another team to get points. All of this came out through telemetry. And so, that's not in the spirit of playing the game. We have boosting, where somebody will give their account details over to somebody else so they can boost it, potentially for something like the Apex Legends Global Series, so they can go to the finals, in person and have a holiday in London or wherever it's being held, etc. On consoles, you've got strike packs that automate some of the commands, can nullify things like gun recoil, etc. Exploiters, they're trying to find bugs or untested and unexpected behavior. They're going into scripts, seeing if they can hack scripts. They're fuzzing APIs and network packets to take down your servers, or they're mining data and just looking for what's coming up next. Or those exploiters on PC might swap textures out or assets out because they've reverse engineered the data formats. And then you're scrambling around to go, how the hell did somebody get that asset into there? You've got to be very careful, kind of understanding kind of the attack vectors. And then you've got fraud and toxic behavior, account takeovers, poor security posture, trusting the client too much, and API security, and Apex did that in the early days. And then you've got toxic behavior. which is around user-generated content. So whenever there's a group name or you've got text, chat, or VoIP, then there's toxic behavior can result from that. That can be somebody having a bad day, that they just have a few hours where they're just abusive to everybody. That can be people that are just in there wanting to be toxic the whole time. We actually analyzed the data in Apex, and we had a situation where about 4% of our text chat was toxic, but we found individual cases where an individual had over 1,000 toxic messages in a day. Blatantly, that person wasn't having a bad day. They were just being an a-hole. You have in co-op games, a team game that's competitive, people exit the team if they don't get the character they want or they don't like the people in there. You've got smurfing, which is people creating new accounts to stomp on new players away from keyboard, etc. There's an awful lot on the security side that you just have to keep going at continually to keep your game secure. With that said, these are my email addresses if people want to get in touch with me, and I'm happy now to answer questions, and I will stop sharing.
This is where in-person the round of applause comes in, Fred, but on a webinar, it's not quite the same. But that was amazing. Thank you. Absolutely loved it. And an awful lot to digest there and think about. Some incredible observations. We should go into the Q&A first and have a quick look at some of those specific questions. We'll start with Emma's asked a question about, you decided not to use Thunderhead early on. I think you said that. Is there a particular reason for
that? So we shipped on Thunderhead with Microsoft. There were two reasons we moved away. One was cost. And one was the level of service from Microsoft. Thunderhead was built on top of Azure. Azure as a service is great. Sadly, there were some teething problems when Thunderhead launched. Titanfall was the first game to launch on Thunderhead. And what we found was every time Microsoft added a new partner to the retail, Titanfall was affected. And so my DevOps, the Respawn DevOps team just couldn't sleep. In fact, we had Microsoft's ZOC, which is the people that monitor the Xbox outages, were calling Respawn up rather than their own team that created the service.
Right.
So
okay.
A couple of guys just couldn't go on holiday. We're getting called up 5 times a week to fix problems that were ultimately Microsoft's, and we just couldn't sustain it. Teething problems, that's what you get being first.
Yeah, absolutely. I suppose along a similar vein here, a question from AB about the approach in terms of what do you want to build yourself and what do you want to buy in from third-party providers. It's a fascinating debate, I'm sure, that every company goes through based on their size and their technical skills and what have you. But were there certain things that you would always recommend that are outsourced, or certain things that you'd always try and build if you were doing this again?
Yeah, I tried to get this across, and maybe I didn't do a very good job of it. For things that are just bread and butter, they're vanilla services like storing persistence, matchmaking, etc. Not matchmaking. There's a lot of back-end services that are tried and tested, road tested, shipped in multiple games now, that will give you a very good level of service and can scale. I wouldn't try and repeat those. I wouldn't try and make those ourselves. I would always try and find where's your game need something that's different to any other game. Where are you going to add? Where is your team adding the value? Is it some kind of new social interaction or something? Maybe it's still built on top of one of these core services, because a lot of them are customizable I'm working with a developer that's customized the matchmaking that's available through Heroic heavily to give it their twist and make sure they understand how it works and can drive the numbers. Because matchmaking, even moving matchmaking, we did this on Apex. We improved matchmaking and it had a 1% impact on retention, which was phenomenal for the numbers, both in terms of the number of players playing and also the revenue. So very small differences can make a massive impact. So always try and figure out, where are you going to be unique? Is there anything in the market that does that? If not, make it yourself. But you're right, there's people feed into this, and so it can never be as black and white as that.
Yeah. That's a fascinating world though, isn't it? And
Yeah.
I suppose on a similar thread, there's a question here from Kayan about sort of testing. Um, how do you decide how many people you want to test your product? What's the sort of is there some sort of balance towards that? And what's the sort of standard of play testing like, do you think, generally in the market?
Uh, I I think games have gotten just generally, games have gotten very big, and we scratched the surface of most games. I know we did a lot of automation on Star Wars to play the Golden Path and automate that. There were still sadly things that when we shipped, and EA has large test teams. It puts lots of people on testing because quality is very important. But sadly, I think nowadays you're only ever scratching the surface. I think automate as much as you can that's boring. Like you can have bots that try and jump out of the world, or just random inputs and just throw thousands of them at it. I think you want real QA people playing kind of the golden path to say, is that experience actually fun? Because I think that's where humans are significantly better. They're also a lot better at taking things that took 20 steps and refining that down to 3 steps to go, we think this, if you do these 3 things, this will generate the bug much more quickly, which again is a time and cost saving that isn't there with AI at the moment. So the QA team on Apex was nearly 300 people, and some of that is a symptom. When I left, some of that is a symptom of, to experience the game, you needed 60 players. Even though we'd built the bots and everything, they don't give you the same actual experience of playing the game and it being competitive. And so you can't get that quality, that feedback on, is this actually still quality?
Interesting you mentioned the telemetry systems that you had as well, and the purpose, because that was multi-purpose. It sounded like you suggested it could be really useful in providing data for people that weren't in the team, so they could understand the metrics and what was going on, which is fascinating in itself. But did you make it yourself, or was that something which you bought off the shelf?
So a lot of the telemetry that was immediate feedback was built in Grafana, standard kind of back-end systems, so we could see trends in real time and the reporting and everything else. For the in-game telemetry, EA has a system and a taxonomy across all the games to try and unify the kind of business elements. So the number of players, retention, and some of the standard metrics. And so that was an EA system. Actually, when we launched Apex, we broke it. We had so again, we had server-side controls to turn on and off telemetry. When we shipped Apex, instead of sending a telemetry event for every clip of bullets, we sent a telemetry event for every bullet in a clip. And we just overwhelmed, and our servers started stuttering. So we turned that off. Once we figured out what it was, we turned it off for a few days and then turned it back on again. But yes, you can serve different needs with the data. With telemetry, my advice is make sure somebody's looking at it all the time. That we had, again, with a team that like Apex that grew and people leave, we had telemetry events there that were serving things in the early days that were no longer relevant 2 years down the line. And so you can end up with so much, like a fraction of your data actually being meaningful and useful.
Yeah. Yeah.
it's worth just kind of keep on top of that, because all of that costs you. You pay for egress
Mm.
costs on that data, and it can end up being tens or hundreds of thousands of dollars.
Yeah, that's fascinating, isn't it? It's a whole new world out there. That's a fascinating
There
space in
is,
that, what do
yeah.
you really need and what do you not need and what's a nice to have.
But I think the way to think about it, Sam, is always try and figure out what questions do you want to answer, and then you figure out what data gives you the answers.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah.
if you've got a clear goal in mind, it can be significant in helping you prune the work and the data involved.
And how do you feel when the commercial bosses are looking at your products and telling you it's probably got 10 times more potential than you think it does? Do you like that kind of, does it feel like they're interfering, or is it a validation on the work that you're doing? How do you feel about that kind of thing?
There's oh, it's a great question. There's um, it can be healthy sometimes, and it can be unhealthy. Um, there were there were certainly times uh, when there was a micro, and there was a couple of mistakes that are publicly known about. There was the Iron Crown event where we took away player choice on purchases, etc. Um, and to be fair, Vince went ballistic with everybody for, we dropped the ball on that, and we said it would never happen again. Because you're trying to make sure players have, you're not funneling down. They've got to, example in Apex, always use loot boxes. That there's an alternative path where they can buy the items that they want to, and that sadly for that event was taken away. So that sometimes that is very healthy, with people going, "What were you doing? What were you
Hmm.
thinking?" Um, and I certainly know, another example in Apex, for example, is whilst in the architecture diagram it's talked about there's this system that where you can take telemetry events and create custom offers for people. Now, what you can say is those custom offers could be, if you're not careful, very contentious, in that they're trying to exploit players. But actually, at a fundamental level, something like Apex Legends, if you look at the data, not everybody plays with all of the legends, and yet Apex is offering them items from legends they don't even play. So that, it takes the players time, and you can see this from playing the game. It takes players time and effort to go and find the things that are actually relevant to them. And if you can surface things, it's not hard sell. If you surface things that they actually might like, they might make the purchase more quickly and more readily. You don't have to be like really hard sell on those things. Just surface things that are actually relevant. And I'd say that Apex, when I left, hadn't finished implementing that. I haven't seen recently that that's improved. I might have missed that. But so that was always a thing from EA, going, why aren't you using the system we've got? We use it in all our other games. That was healthy. That's
Mm, mm.
there's definitely times where it's been unhealthy, but I won't go into those.
And we're a little bit over time. I'm just going to ask you one little personal question at the end. I mean, this has been really insightful. Thank you so much for sharing all that knowledge, and I can see why you can't rest, you can't settle. There's always more to do, and it's such a
Yeah.
a fun environment to be in, live service games as well as the whole of the games industry. We're very privileged to work in this industry. What are you looking forward to in the next few years? What are you really going to get your teeth into? What's the things that's really exciting you at the moment?
Uh, oh, well, I personally, I need to get back to finishing my little games.
Okay.
Uh, I kind of put them on the back burner for Antidote Gamers and for Special Effect. And as I say, I'm helping somebody ship a major title next year, and that's important to me that that goes well.
Mm.
Um, I'd like to get back to finishing my little titles. I have no expectations they'll do anything. They're kind of itches I needed to scratch from a long time ago. One of them is a game I promised my daughter like 15 years ago. She's fully adult now, and but it's kind of named after her, and I just want to be able to play that game with her. If it
Amazing.
does nothing
Yeah.
else, I'll be
That only
very
needs two
happy.
players, you and her, and that's it. That's
Yeah,
perfect,
exactly. Yeah, I'd be more than happy. And yes, because some of it, was about getting back to my craft, because having risen to VP level, I was kind of feeling there's an element of I was asking engineers to do things that I'd forgotten how hard they were. And
Yeah.
having gone back to coding, I remembered how addictive it is, but also, yeah, it's harder than I remember. And I'm doing hardly anything with Gen AI or LLMs, because for me, it's about building the muscle memory up again.
Terrific. I think that's a wonderfully positive note to end on. So thank you so much for your time today.
Thank you, Sam.
There's a few questions we didn't get to, but we'll try and cover those in another forum. But thank you to our audience for joining us today. I hope you've had a good time. Yes, amazing talk. Thank you very much, JH, for that. Really inspirational. Thank you for sharing and taking the time to share. And good luck with your next projects. And thank you everyone for joining us.
Thank you.
And talk to you soon. Thank you.
Bye now.